Good morning, fellow students. Today's lesson is going to focus on communication. This is lesson 4 and 5 that we are going to be looking at. So it is going to focus the first lesson 4. We'll look at communication, the types of communication we use in a business context. Cross-cultural communication is part of the types of communication, and creating a customer care culture. So we are going to look at the word communication. As you can see there you've got two types of hands shaking. All right, so you can make up any type of definition from what you see there. You can define it as a way of greeting. You can define it as a way of gratuity, saying thanks to each other. And so many countries and so many cultures have a different definition of what you see in front of you. Is communication. It tells us that it's a process by which meanings are created in human interaction with symbols. So communication is a process of expressing ideas, thoughts, in a verbal and non-verbal way. So you can express your ideas by speaking to somebody, by talking to somebody, through words, and also through non-verbal communication systems, that is now sign language or by writing on a piece of paper. Now, communication has a process. It starts with the sender and ends with a receiver. Now, within the process of communication, there are various barriers that one needs to look at. But before we go on to the barriers, communication really is about expressing your ideas, your thoughts, um, through a communication channel, which you see there, either by using tools such as emails, face-to-face contact, um, fax machines that were used long time ago, SMS, WhatsApp, and you express these thoughts and ideas through words, non-verbal, sign languages to get to the receiver. So what we're saying is that the receiver receives this type of ideas and thoughts as an information or as data. All right, he listens and then he expresses or answers the sender back through again expressing words. Now, if you look at this type of communication and in the service industry, we've got the company on top there and we've got the customers down below there. So what we are looking at is communication that happens through internally within the company, and communication, as you can see there, and communication that happens through externally to the outside market. So when we are saying internally, is involves communication between CEOs, general managers, line managers with their lower level employees. So this type of communication can either be vertical or horizontal, depending on the structure and organization structure of the business. So vertical communication, horizontal communication can happen in meetings, it can happen through workshops, it can also happen through emails between employees and managers. So, and then when we talk about communication that happens externally, we're trying to talk about we're talking about companies reaching out to their customers, informing them about their products through advertising, sales promotion, direct marketing. And this type of communication is what we call external marketing communication. All right, and then we've got another different type of interactive, where the entire company, employees and customers actually communicate together. So interactive marketing involves these three parties here, and it's not only the company but the employees as well, and the customers. So this is where you've got relationship building, personal selling. You've got customer service centers where customers can actually reach out to employees when they've got complaints, and then also the company can respond by interacting with customers, giving them information about new products and so forth. So now the types of communication that you can come across. We've got intrapersonal communication, interpersonal, and small group communication. We spoke about this in class. Intrapersonal communication is when you are basically talking to yourself. Okay? Interpersonal communication involves two or more people. So when you're having a conversation with your friend, for example. Small group communication, it says it's at least 3 people and a maximum of 15 people. Then we have public speaking. So the communication equation, what it involves, what you hear normally during communication, you have a tone of voice, and then you've got vocal clarity and verbal expressiveness. So when a person is talking to you, 40% of the message is heard through a speech, and also through expressions. Okay, so when the person is talking, he's showing some expressions, like I'm talking now, and I'm showing expressions on my face. I can either be happy or angry. So 40% of the message is heard through this, and then 50% of the message is normally what you feel or what you see. So normally you see my face, my facial expression, the way I dress, my posture, my body language, my eye contact with you, and my touch or gesture. So it's very important that you know that when you are talking to a client, the client doesn't only hear your voice, he looks at everything, including your body posture, your facial expression, because you can be talking to a customer, but your facial expression is not appealing, or the way you are dressed is not professional. So that can be a barrier in communication, because sometimes you are trying to convey an important message to the client, but because of the way you are dressed, or the way your hair is cut, or your nails, the way your nails look, that can be a distraction to the client, and the client doesn't listen to the important message that was supposed to be carried over to him or her. So, and then 10% of the message, people listen to 10% of the words that you're actually saying. So it's very important when you're communicating to the customer that all these things are proper. Okay. Again, the types of communication we have also mass communication. This is normally when you have a communication with a large group of people, normally at assemblies or public assemblies. And normally this type of communication is done through radios and television or email. This can also be done in a company or an organization. Organizational communication is normally a communication that happens within the organizational structure. It involves communication from management to lower down employees. These are such as schools, churches, and government. This type of communication is what we call non-verbal communication. Okay, we know that a lot of companies and companies or media companies have actually moved away just from communicating with voice messages. Now they're including what we call non-verbal communication, and this is what you see normally during our news broadcasts on NBC, on other countries' national broadcasting news channels. And so it is very important that we take hold that not every customer can understand voice messages. So we have clients that are deaf that only understand non-verbal type of communication. And some of these non-verbal type of communication is the thumbs up. The thumbs up can mean quite a number of things. It can say okay. It can also mean yes, I agree. So it depends from culture to culture and from organization to organization. All right. So the best way to have a good communication system within your organization or between you as a supplier and the customer is always to maintain eye contact with your customer. And your body language should also be involved in your communication, because your body language can mean a lot of things. It can show off a lot of things. Sometimes silence, it means you are listening. Okay. um, Smiling all the time, that is part of customer service, good customer service skills. Summarizing the important points that you've heard from your customer so that you follow up later with the customer. Encouraging the customer to bring forth the important points, all right? And also asking the customer questions to clarify the meaning or the ideas or the expressions that the customer brings forward. Again, there are certain barriers to a good, effective communication system. Now, I mentioned before that it's important that you adhere to all the tools of communication. You make sure that when you are talking to a customer, facial expression is very important. Uh, Eye contact is very important. Smiling all the time is very important. But some of the things that can actually affect good communication between you and the customer is such as the language that you're using, the noise around us, lack of interest when the customer is not interested in what you're saying, or when you as a supplier is not interested in what the customers are saying. Disability of a customer. Sometimes a customer cannot interpret properly because either the customer is deaf or the customer cannot see what you are displaying. So it's very important to be aware of the disability of your customer so that you can actually communicate, use important tools to communicate to the right type of customer. Discomfort, sometimes the customer might feel that this topic is not good enough for him or her. They don't feel comfortable talking to you, either because of the way they're dressed, of the way you as a supplier is dressed, or the environment they're sitting in is not comfortable for them. Also, the distance between you and the customer can also be a distraction. It might be that if you're communicating through media channels such as Zoom or email or WhatsApp or face-to-face contact, some of these issues might be a distraction. So if there is, for example, a very far distance between you and the customer, the customer might not be listening effectively. Some customers prefer to meet with a supplier face-to-face than rather through WhatsApp videos, face-to-face videos. Some customers prefer that they speak with their suppliers on the phone rather than face-to-face. So distance can also be a distraction. Too many questions might also be a distraction. When you're asking too many questions, the client might be distracted from actually getting the actual important points, and also other people who are around you and the customer can also be a distraction. How to listen to customers. It is very important to understand the ideas and expressions of customers. And how do we do that? By attending to the customer and listening to the customer effectively. Okay, what does that mean? When the customer comes in, for instance, with a complaint, it's very important to take down a notebook and write down the important points. Not necessarily a complaint, maybe the customer has an idea for you. Make sure you have a booklet or a piece of paper that you can follow up on after the customer has expressed all the ideas, and write down the most important points. If you're not the type of person who saves easily in the brain, you might as well write down these important points on a piece of paper. That means you're actively listening. So, and then after you have written down the important points that the customer has mentioned, you can then attend to the needs of the customer immediately. If you are not clear on the points that the customer has actually displayed or pointed out to you, then you might ask the customer questions to clarify the points. And you need to be available. It means fully available to the customer. You cannot be busy with something else or on the phone or talking to another colleague of yours while you are attending to the customer. So it is very important to be in a comfortable environment where you are in a closed door environment um, with a client, and no distractions such as other people distracting you, or for instance outside noise distracting you. Make sure that you are fully available to listen to the client, and you maintain eye contact with the client so that the client sees and knows that you are actually attending to his complaints. Make sure you have and show that attentive posture, to show that you are actually listening. Your body posture is very important. You cannot be talking to the client and you're fiddling around, or you are yawning, or you are tapping your feet, or you are clapping your hands. That just shows that you are not listening and you are not attending to the client's problems. You concentrate so that you pick up the most important points and you ask the necessary questions. And so it's very important that when you allow customers, when you open the platform for customers to come in and air their views and their ideas and expression, you invite them. A lot of companies have what we call open door policy, where they allow the customers to express their concerns, their ideas in a book or on email. They actually follow up on the client after they've provided the service to the client to find out, was madam happy about the service, to rate the service. If they're not happy, to give their views and ideas. Also, they ask the client questions about the service delivery and encourage clients to bring forth their ideas and views so that they can improve their service. It's very important when you are questioning a client that you do not go overboard. You need to give the client enough time. Remember when we spoke about the different types of customers, the know-it-all, then you've got those clients that are impatient, then you've got clients that are very talkative. It's very important to ask certain questions depending on the type of customer. Like the talkative client, you do not want to ask this talkative client open questions, because the talkative client will go on and on and on and on. You'd rather ask the talkative client closed questions. And then obviously the client who's not willing to express his ideas, encourage them by asking them open questions. What do you think about this product? What can you do? What can we do to improve the service delivery? Okay. Paraphrasing as well, and then you check for understanding. Make sure that the client understands all the points you've put forward by asking questions. Sir, did you understand what I just said? Do you agree on these points or the rules and regulations that we've put forward? What do you think about this? So it's very important that you paraphrase and you ask closed-ended questions, you ask open-ended questions to allow the customers to bring forth their ideas. Okay, so paraphrasing, reflecting facts, reflecting feelings, reflecting silence, summarizing, choosing your words correctly. So at the end of the day, a customer is also a human being, just like us as suppliers who are giving over the service to the client. And so it's very important that we open the platform to customers to allow them to bring forth either their complaints, their views, so that we can improve our service delivery. So you allow them to bring forth their feelings into during the service delivery or after the service delivery, where we follow up, because we want to know what the customer feels uh, after they've used the service. Are they happy? We want evidence, we want facts, so that we can use this in our research to improve our service delivery. Okay? Sometimes the customer is silent. We need to find out why the customer is silent. Are they happy? They're not happy? Some customers are not good at expressing their interests and their ideas um, through face-to-face communication systems. They would rather express it through emails or by writing a letter. So it's very important that we take note of this different types of customers, and we use the proper mechanisms or methods to communicate with our customers. Now, when you are using your voice, either through telephone communication or face-to-face communication, it's very important that you use the right tone of voice, because Customers can actually detect by just the way your voice is sounding, which mood you are in. If you pick up the phone, the client calls, "Good morning," and then you sound very rude. The customer can pick that up, or you sound disinterested. The customer can pick it up, or you sound sad. The customer can pick it up. So when you are talking to the customer, whether it's face to face or on the telephone, you need to use the right voice tone with a customer. Okay. So it's very important. When you become loud, it can either mean you are angry, you are upset, you are irritated. Okay. When you speak faster, it can either mean you are nervous, or you are irritated. So also, you as a supplier, you need to detect all these tone of voices from your customers. We know when we looked at the type of customers, we said there's different type of customers. We've got the talkative, we've got the angry, the suspicious. So as you're talking to these customers, whether it's face to face or on the phone, you detect all these types of voices in your telephone conversation or face to face communication. So you can either detect that the customer is angry by the tone of voice. Is the customer loud? Is the customer speaking fast? Is he getting irritated? Is he bored? Does he have a cheerful voice? It means he's happy. Is the customer's voice warm? Does he want to listen? Is his tone of voice, clear? Do you understand what he's saying? Does he sound bossy? From these tone of voices, you can either pick up that the client is interested or not interested in your conversation, or the client is angry or tired or bored. So you need to detect all these tone of voices for you to understand in what mood the customer is in. So from this type of communication, we've got a very important type of tool that we use when we are communicating with customers, and this is through telephone conversations. Now, a lot of us, when we are speaking to our friends, we use what we call slang. Even on WhatsApp, we use a lot of slang type of words. But when you're in a professional context, in a working environment, we try and avoid using slang messages because not everybody understands the slang words. You might have a slang word in your organization that everybody understands, but it doesn't mean just because you've got the slang type of wording in your company, the customers also understand that type of slang word. So when you are speaking to customers on the telephone, you answer the phone in a professional manner. What do we mean when we say in a professional manner? I spoke to you about that already in class when I said the first thing that you do is to identify your company. Not you, because the customer needs to know when they're calling the right company. So you bring forth the company name, followed by your name, and then followed by a greeting, and then how may I help you, giving the customer a platform to speak. So again, I'll repeat that. When you answer the phone, as the phone comes in, the first thing you need to do is to identify your company. Then comes your name, then comes the greeting. Some companies actually do it this way. Identify the company, identify the department, identify your name, and then the greeting and giving the customer a platform to reply. So during that conversation, you need to basically display a positive image. You don't want to have a very funny tone of voice when you are answering a phone call from a customer, because you don't know what type of customer you are having at the end of the line. Maybe the customer is frustrated, the customer is already bored. So you always project the same type of message every time you answer the phone in the company, whether you're a receptionist, whether you're a manager, whether you are a supervisor in the organizational structure. If the phone call is not for you, you inform the customer that you are busy transferring the call to the person they are looking for. Now, some companies, what they do normally, and I see a lot of people do not have training when it comes to answering telephone calls. When the customer calls into the company, the receptionist, or let's say an employee, answers the phone. In Namibia, Human Resource Department, Petrina Makubela speaking. How may I help you? The customer speaks. Yes, good morning. I would like to speak to, let's say, Joan Williams in the marketing department. And obviously, you are in the HR department. Now, the next thing that most companies do is to tell the client, sir, you or madam, you have reached the wrong department. You can try calling the reception to get to the marketing department. Now that's actually wrong, because you as an employee in the HR department can actually transfer this customer to the marketing department. Okay? Because if you send the customer back to reception, it might be that the customer will be sent back to a long line of waiting customers who are also waiting for the reception line. So it's best if you transfer the client, because you've got the ability to transfer the client. Transfer the client straight from your department to the marketing department. Then you don't make the customer wait. So if you do not know how to transfer calls, it's very important to get that training, because I can transfer a call. I don't need to be a reception. I can transfer a call from my phone call to my colleague's phone call, and I don't need to make the customer go back to reception. So that's very important. If the client or you're seeking for a person who's not available, take a message and make sure you deliver that message to your colleague so that the colleague follows up on the customer. And most of the time, or some of the time, colleagues do not pass on messages to their other colleagues, or the colleagues never get back to the customer. That's why customers become frustrated. So you need to get telephone training. You need to know how to use the telephone, how to answer the telephone, how to transfer the telephone, how to take the messages. And when you're on the phone, you need to speak clear, okay, in a professional manner, not using slang. You know, your tone of voice should express kindness. It should express friendliness, you know. State your name, like I said, your organization first and then your name. Write, if you're taking the message, write down the caller's name and the important message that you need to convey to your colleague. You know, if you are being rude, it can be depicted by the client on the phone. Okay? And if the client is expressing something, although it's not your concern and it's your colleague's concern, take it down. Listen to the customer so that you can convey that message to your colleague. Okay? Do not eat and drink while on the phone, whether it's bubblegum or food. During lunch, you have lunch. Obviously, some customers, employees stay in the office while having lunch. It does not mean that if a phone rings and you are having lunch, you are allowed to eat on the phone, because that is very destructive. Okay? Rather not answer the phone during lunchtime. And so when you are answering the phone, it's very important you keep it professional, because you are answering not your personal telephone, but the company's telephone. Okay? Focus on the conversation. Write down the important points if it's a message. Identify the company yourself or the department you are working for. Answer with the appropriate level, tone of voice, not an angry voice, not a unclear voice. You need to listen clearly to what the customer is saying, so you can note down the important points that you need to convey and forward to your employees, and gather the right type of information, the date the client called, the important points that the client wants to bring forward, so that you can either follow up or pass it on to your colleague. Now, when you are taking a message, what you need to take down when you are taking a message, this is very important. Say, for instance, the phone call is not for you. It's very important that you take down the name and surname of the client. Okay? The time and date that the call was made. What is the call about? The important points. If it's a complaint, write down the complaint. And so you need to also take down the client's contact details, so that whoever this message is meant for, the person can follow up. Okay, so those points are very important when taking a message. Now, Apart from verbal communication, we also have what we call body language. Now, body language can either be used together with verbal type of communication. So non-verbal communication and verbal communication can be used together. So while speaking to the client, smiling can express friendliness, all right? When you are face to face with a client, the way you are dressed can express a lot of things. It can express culture, it can express untidiness, professionalism. So make sure when you are dressed, you are dressed in a professional manner, especially in the hospitality and tourism industry. If you look at the airline industry and the hotel industry, most of these companies have uniforms. They have name tags to identify their employees. Okay, this is a professional way of showing that to your customers that you are basically loyal, you are adhering to their request, and that you are professional, you are ready to serve them and to exceed the expectations. You shake your hands of your customers appropriately, leaning forward. It also means either you are interested, you are tired. So all these types of body languages can mean different things. Kissing somebody on the forehead, kissing somebody on the cheek. It can mean different things in different countries. And now, because of COVID 19, some of these body languages are minimized because of COVID 19 in different countries. Okay? Um, Also, you need to be aware of cultural differences because certain body languages mean different in different countries in cultural contexts. Okay, like if you bow your head, it means something different in China, and it also means something different in Namibia. So if you shake somebody's hand, it can mean thank you, it can mean hi. If you clap your hands in this way, it can mean different in Namibia. If you clap your hands this way, it can mean different if, for instance, in China or wherever in the world. Okay, but it is very important in all these types of body languages. You need to use, or in verbal communication, your voice needs to have a low pitch. Okay, because when you speak loud, it can express either anger or irritation. So you need to have a low tone of voice with a low pitch rather than a high pitch. Okay, and your voice, you need to be consistent with your voice, because when your voice pitch changes, it shows different types of moods. All right, if it's high, it might mean irritation, it might mean anger. So if it's constant and the pitch is low, it means that okay, this person is actually okay, he's fine, he's comfortable. All right, when you are transferring calls, it's very important, like I said, transfer calls to the right person. Know how to transfer calls. Okay, if the person is not available, take a message and tell the client that your colleague will get back to him or her. Okay, and inform the client that you're transferring the call to the person that they're looking for. Okay, hold on, sir, I'm currently transferring you to Mrs. Joan Williams' landline. Um, but before you transfer the call, make sure that Mrs. Joan Williams is available. If it's not available, it's no need to transfer the client to somebody that's not available, because the phone will just cut. So if the person is not available, inform the client that Mrs. Joan Williams is not available. Can I take a message? If Mrs. Joan Williams is available, before transferring the call, you call Joan Williams and you tell her there is a client on hold for you. Can I transfer the call? Because you don't know if she's in a meeting. She'll tell you, yes, it's fine, transfer the call. And you tell the client, sir, I'm transferring your call immediately to Mrs. Joan Williams' office. Okay, thank you for calling. So when you are greeting customers, it's very important to maintain a friendly welcome. Also, smiling is very important. Eye contact. Tell them your name or identify your company. Ask how you can help you. And this can either be done face to face when a client is entering the company, or it can be done through telephone conversation. It's very important to maintain eye contact, especially during face-to-face communication. Also smile all the time. It's very important to smile, acknowledge the existence and presence of the customer, and ask the customer how you can help them. And you give the customer full attention. Not while you're speaking to the customer, you're busy on the phone or you're busy with other customers. Give the customer your full attention and be polite and cautious with the customer. How do we establish a relationship and a good rapport with the customer? This is very important. The first thing that you do is, we spoke about, it's very important that the first time you meet the customer, the way you are dressed, your smile, your eye contact, first impression always counts. Okay, first and last impression always counts. Okay, when the customer is entering the company, the customer needs to see that you're actually willing to receive and welcome him or her. Okay, you identify yourself, and your position, and you give the customer the platform to ask questions or express him or herself. All right. Your body posture, the way you are dressed, it must be very, very professional, like I said. Now, non-verbal communication is wordless. It's normally touching, gesture, facial expressions, the way you are dressed, also the way you are, your smile, all these type of wordless communication systems or tools can be used together with verbal communication systems. So we move over to intercultural communication. Intercultural communication is basically face-to-face interactions between people from different cultures. Now, what do we mean by that? Face-to-face interactions is not necessarily only verbal, but also non-verbal. So we communicate differently in different countries with different cultures. We know that every country has various types of cultures. Like in Namibia, we've got the Oshivambu culture, we've got the Damara culture, we've got the Bushmen, we've got the Hereros, and each and every tribe or culture in Namibia has a different way of expressing ideas and thoughts. Okay, firstly, verbal communication. We have different languages in Namibia. Okay, Hereros speak their language, or Shivambu, they speak different dialects from Kwanyama to Oshindonga. Then we have the Namas and Damaras who also speak their type of language, and they write their language in a different way. Like, for example, we've got the Chinese who also write in a different type of way. So that's verbal. Now, when we come to face-to-face interaction, in a non-verbal manner, different cultures have a different way of greeting each other in a non-verbal manner. All right? Sometimes some of them bow, sometimes some of them clap their hands to show respect. So we have to identify and respect all the different cultural interactions. That's what we call intercultural communication. So for us to understand the different cultures all over the world, you need to experience and you need to travel the world. Okay, so for instance, like the tourists who come to Namibia, they're here to learn the culture of Namibians, not to become, but to understand how to interact with different cultures. So, but there are a lot of barriers in what we call intercultural communication. Even in our organizations, we have different types of cultures. Your manager might be a Damara, your supervisor might be a Buster, and your line workers might be Oshivambu speaking. So because of these cultural differences, there might be difficulty in communicating with all these types of cultures. Some people do not understand English very well. They would rather communicate using their own mother tongue or mother languages like Oshivambu. So there are a lot of barriers to intercultural communication. One of them is anxiety. In the organizational structure, we have employees down in the line of the organization that don't speak proper English. and they sometimes don't understand the communication that is passed on from management to lower line employees. So they become anxious because they don't understand. And so they do not take the message very well, and they react in either a negative manner. Sometimes assuming similarity instead of differences, where we don't identify the difference in culture, where we are just saying, you know what, I'm going to convey this message to everybody the same, but not everybody is the same. Even our customers are from different cultures and different backgrounds. The customer might not understand English very well. So it's very important that you actually get your colleagues who speak the same language as the customer to express that message to the language that the customer understands. So you cannot assume that everybody or every customer is the same. So that becomes a problem. When you are communicating a message to all the customers in the same way, it becomes a problem because you assume that every customer will understand, but it is not true. And then we call ethnocentrism. You know, the fact that sometimes a company or employees within the company want to separate people, and not understand different cultures and only want to understand a specific culture. It's not right, because we are living in a global economic environment with different cultures. Not every country in the world uses English as a professional language, and yet we want to tap in all these countries. So that's why Namibia has moved away from what we call ethnocentrism, where they have identified that our customers, our tourists that actually come to Namibia, are Spanish speaking, they're German speaking, they're French speaking. So what do? We employ people who can speak different languages to attend to our different tourists. Then we get to stereotyping, where you actually assuming that a specific type of group is a certain way or behaves in a certain way. Stereotyping is very, very dangerous. So we need to avoid that. Stereotyping, prejudice, where you're suspicious, and you don't like a specific religion, or you don't like a certain gender. And so all these things can actually affect the way you're communicating to people. Racism can also be a prejudice type of barrier, where you only attend to white people rather than black people. So these barriers are very important to notice, because they can affect the way you are communicating with your employees, and they can be a barrier to the way you are. Now, what is cross-cultural communication? Cross-cultural communication is communication that happens between two people of different cultures. Okay, so I can be Yoshivambo speaking, and I can be communicating to Herero or Tamara speaking individual. All right, so the way we express ourselves is different. Okay, so my expressions by doing this or clapping hands is not the same if it's done, for example, by a Kavango speaking person. All right, the non-verbal symbols and sometimes also the verbal words are not the same. Okay, so we need to take note. It's very important to improve our cross-cultural communication skills. It's very important that we motivate our employees to speak different types of languages, okay, so that they can cut across the differences in our cultural background, not only with tourists, but also with each other in the organization. So when you are speaking to somebody from a different culture, some of them don't speak English properly. It's very important to, when you're speaking to this person, to be clear, to slow down and allow them to speak, to separate your questions. Do not ask 5 questions at one go. Ask one question at a time and allow them to answer. And avoid negative questions, because some people take it very personal when they can't understand what you're trying to express, especially in a language that they don't understand. Take turns. You speak and allow the other person to speak. If the person doesn't understand, involve a translator. Be supportive. Encourage the person to bring forward his or her ideas, even in their own language. Check for meanings. Nowadays, people are using technology for translation. Sometimes they don't need a person to translate. So it's very important cross-cultural communication um, in an effective way so that we can understand our customers. Okay, try and avoid slang all the time. Avoid slang because slang means differently in different cultures. Also, don't laugh all the time because it might be offensive. Be professional at all times, even when you're speaking in a different cultural language. Okay, so we need to be aware of the cultural diversity we have in our organization, in our market. Nowadays, companies are moving towards advertising not only in English but in different languages so that customers are able to understand all their products in a different way, because not all customers understand English, and every customer depicts or understands adverts in a different way. So if we advertise it only in English, they might lose the important points that you wanted to point out in the advert. So it's very important that we are aware of our cultural diversity in our markets and in our organization, and we capitalize on these important aspects, because some of these diversities is not only within our countries but in a global context. Okay, so in conclusion, what I'm trying to say is culture is very important when you're communicating with your customers or with your colleagues. You need to be aware of your employees or your colleagues' culture. You need to be aware of your customers' culture, diverse cultures, so that you can respect and communicate in the right way. You need to be aware of your disabled customers, those that are not cannot communicate in a verbal way, and you need to communicate and use various tools of communication based on the different cultures and based on the capabilities of your customers. So, this is just 4 questions that you can ask yourself after this topic. 5 examples. I need you to give me 5 examples of great service that you've experienced as a customer in Namibia. Secondly, I knew I was at my club because. The third question, our service is special because. The fourth question, our service is less than it might be because. So, you can ask yourself these 4 questions. Okay, you can pretend that you're an employee of a company and you can ask yourself these questions, or you can pretend you are a customer and you can ask yourself these 4 questions. You don't need to write it down. This is just for you to basically, after you've listened to this PowerPoint, see if you actually are a happy customer, if you've ever been given that proper service that you expect from your supplier, whether it's in a shop, whether it's at a restaurant, whether it's at a hotel, or whether it's at the airline. Okay, answer these questions, and after that, please go to your discussion forum, answer the short question that I have for you there, because it will count 10 points to this topic. Also, you can then also ask yourself these 2 questions. Give 5 memorable service moments you've known and that you've experienced as a customer in Namibia. Doesn't necessarily have to be a hospitality or tourism service. What business gives the best service to you, and what is it that they don't make that makes their service so memorable compared to other companies? You could read through the customer care points, and then you can go to your discussion forum. You can also read through the service ethics. These are just the principles of good service to your customers. And so the topic has ended for today on communication and cross-cultural communication. You can go on to your discussion forum and answer the question that I have for you. Thank you.